Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lucia Wallace, and I am the Alumni Relations Coordinator here at OCAD University. This webinar today, Lunch and Learn Working as a Professional Artist, is part of our ongoing Lunch and Learn Professional Development Series, where we invite alumni and other speakers to share their experience with you. I want to note before we get started that the Q&A box has been enabled, and you're welcome to put your questions there throughout the presentations, and we will have a dedicated question and answer period after both presentations. And before we begin today, I would like to ask our guest speakers and moderator to briefly introduce themselves. So we'll start with JJ.
Hi, everyone. So glad you could make it today. My name is JJ Lee, and I am the chair of drawing and painting. Anything else? Should I say anything else?
No, that's perfect. Thanks, JJ.
I'm Keight MacLean. I'm an artist. I'm a illustration and drawing and painting graduate.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Olivia Mae Sinclair. I use she, her pronouns. I am a graduate of the IAMD program at OCAD.
Wonderful. So before we begin today's presentations, I would like to read OCAD University's land acknowledgement. OCAD University is a creative space where students are invited to discover and explore themselves and their communities. These are spaces where we invite students to discover and explore their identities. As we provide a space to explore self and place, we also learn and recognize the history of this land. OCAD University is situated on the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. These are the ancestral territories of many nations, including the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original owners and custodians of the land. Toronto is also home to many urban First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will pass things over to Keight.
Okay, let's do this. Press all of the buttons. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. So, as I said, I'm Keight MacLean. I went to OCAD, and I'm gonna talk to you about my life as an artist. So I graduated in 2016. I studied illustration. I minored in drawing and painting, which wound up being what I make my living in now. My favorite part about going to OCAD was the Florence program, which is now sadly defunct, but I spent a year in Italy where I studied art history and also had an independent practice, which taught me a lot about just being an artist. And I've been making art pretty much my whole life. Briefly, my work, I do historical recreations of old masters paintings with, you know, kind of a bit of modern flair, a bit of this and that. My work focuses a lot on women's history and like forgotten women's voices. Nowadays, I'm working a lot more on speaking more openly about chronic illness and what living with that is like. Through my art, I focus a lot on the interaction of beauty and decay and how that can kind of be a metaphor for loving your body even when it's not working. So I want to talk a little bit about my practice, like my day-to-day. I make my living selling my art. I'm very lucky to do so, but it took a bit to get to where I am today. So when I was at OCAD, because of my chronic illness, I did my bachelor's degree in 6 years, which I highly recommend to people if you are struggling with your degree to just take a lower course load. It was absolutely worth it for me, and I ended up learning a lot more because of it. When I graduated, I was working part-time as a studio assistant for another artist, which was It was a mixed bag, but it was wonderful because I got paid minimum wage to practice painting essentially, so it helped me get good at painting. And then the other half of the mixed bag was good and bad because it was super unreliable work. So some weeks I would get like 20 hours of work, some weeks I would get 60 hours of work, and then sometimes I wouldn't work at all for 2 months. And because of that, it really forced me to make my art help make ends meet. So just having that little bit of like push and financial stress really kicked my butt into gear on selling art. When I first graduated, I think it was just 1 month after graduating from OCAD, after doing my illustration thesis, I did my first art fair. And I really want to impart to everyone here today, if nothing else, like art fairs are so wonderful. Specifically, the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair and the Artist Project are two of like my bread and butter shows of the year, and I've been doing them both for many years. When I first graduated, I did Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, or TOEF for short, for the first time. I had a couple years in a row not gotten in, but I think in my final year I had one, my thesis collection, but two, just like a good body of work that I had built up over years at OCAD. And it was enough for me to get in, and it was my first ever art fair. It was very overwhelming, so I actually attended something like this where I learned a lot about art fairs. And I sold my entire thesis collection to a single collector, but also just met so many people, artists, and so many collectors, many of which who still collect my art today, and just built some like good, solid connections at that fair. A few months later, I did the Artist Project, and it was a lot more of the same, meeting a lot of people, building those connections with collectors and other artists. And I was also offered, I think, my second gallery representation at that show. The one most important thing that you can do at these art fairs is build an email list. And I think that's after that very first TOEF, that's how I started to build my career essentially, is anytime someone showed any like interest in my work, if we talked for a while, if they bought a piece, I would ask them to join my mailing list. And same with online, I have like a link on my website, a link in my social medias. I always tell people, like, if you want to hear from me more consistently, join the mailing list. And I only send out emails like once every 6 weeks. It's not a big deal, but I want to know what's going on and like, continue to hear from me. That's the way to go. More about my practice. A lot of what I do in between art fairs is all just using that mailing list to keep in touch with people and having a good website. When I say good website, I mean, obviously a good website, but also I found that when I switched from having a website that was just like a website with prices listed and like a little like email me to buy something, when I switched from that to an actual like online commerce site, my sales exploded, because it turns out that people don't really want to email you, or they don't want any like a barrier to doing the thing that is spending money. So I highly recommend, if you have any sales, to get some kind of e-commerce solution, because it made a big difference in my career and actually being able to sustain myself off of my art. I use Shopify, which is great. I know Squarespace also has options, and I'm sure there are a bunch of other options. I like Shopify because, one, they gave me like a 6-month free trial or something really, really wild. But also the back end is really nice because all the revenue stuff and reports are really easy to understand, which helped me with my taxes a lot. Because as an artist, I'm doing my own taxes, and that's always a nightmare once a year. But also it hooks up to MailChimp, which is what I use for my my mailing list. So anytime a client buys a painting, they are automatically signed up to the mailing list unless they opt out. So it's another great way to just build that the email list. Social media, I know, we're all on the social media to a certain extent. I think of it as a necessary evil. I mostly use Instagram and TikTok, but I probably should be doing more if I'm being honest. I find the best thing to do is using a scheduler. I have pictured down here at the bottom the scheduler I use. It's called Later, and I find it makes it a lot easier to be professional about your like Instagram or TikTok or whatever, so you're posting consistently, but you also get to see like what it looks at like. And I hate doing anything on my phone, so I do this all from my desktop, and it makes it so much easier. Last thing about just like my practice in general is galleries, because I feel like when you think of artists and painters and fine artists in general, you think about galleries a lot. I find nowadays they can be a bit of a mixed bag. I've had experiences with a lot of galleries. I've had representation from a few different galleries in the past. The thing about galleries is most of the time now almost all galleries take 50% commission on any sales, and some of them earn it. I've had some galleries that I love to work with, still love to work with, who actually really earn their 50%. Example of a gallery not earning their 50% is like, one, charging a hanging fee, don't love that. Two, like, you send a client there, they've done almost nothing, they make like an Instagram post or something, and then they take 50% of the sale for what? Versus I've worked with galleries with like massive client bases who are like constantly reaching out to their clients, trying to sell work, paying for ads, showing like throwing big opening nights and stuff like that. That's a good gallery. But in general, talk to other artists about galleries if one approaches you, because in general, other artists who have worked with the gallery can tell you if they're worth it or if there are red flags, because there are often red flags. So, what my day-to-day looks like as an artist. I'm fortunate enough to have my own private studio, though I've worked in shared studios for a lot of my career. I'm still part of an artist collective. It's actually called Flick the Switch. It's like next to OCAD, so I'm down by OCAD all the time still. I usually go into work. Most of my day is painting. Obviously, this is going to look different for a lot of different artists, but because I'm a like classical painter, I have to spend a lot. My paintings just take time, so I have to make the rest of my career work around that giant like time sink essentially. What I usually do is I work in batches of like 10 to 15 paintings at a time, and do like one layer on all of them, second layer on all of them. It just makes the most sense for my time. And if I get stuck on a painting, I can just work on another painting, which is nice because we do not have time for artist block in this economy. When I finish the paintings, the next thing I do is photograph them all, get them up on my website, and then I write out an email newsletter, which is usually like, hey, this is what's been going on in my studio, this is what's been going on briefly in my life, and new paintings are going to be available tomorrow. Watch your email, whatever. That's how I make most of my sales between shows, is just simply doing that. Usually the next day I'll have a bunch of sales. I will package up those paintings, ship all across mostly North America. I have a lot of Canada and US clients. And I use Chit Chats and Canada Post for shipping, depending on who's going to be cheaper and what makes the most sense. Then outside of that, there's always like shows a couple times a year. Sometimes I will have specific group shows I'll do with galleries. I just sent off 2 paintings to Modern Eden Gallery in San Francisco, for example. And then social media, usually once a week, sit down and do that all in one chunk. Replying to emails, those kind of things. Managing supplies is always a struggle because you have to think so much in advance because you don't have time to be waiting for things. And because I'm buying in bulk, you have to order them all at once. And a surprising amount of my life is just priming and sanding panels because I like them really, really smooth and I'm fussy. So that takes up a lot of time. And then also, I listen to about 1 billion podcasts and audiobooks because I'm just sat alone in my studio all day painting. So my big advice for artists starting out is, one, like, I know it's repetitive and you'll be told this a billion times, but like practice really does make all the difference. The amount that your art grows and changes the more you do it. And not just that, but like on an economic level, the faster you get, the more you paint, or like the more you make art, it makes such a difference. You just get better at doing it, which means that you're spending less time on something, which means that technically, like, time is money, you're making more money on the thing. So like literally starting out, just paint or make art so much, all that you can, in all of your free time. The other thing I tell a lot of people is that it's a real job and you have to set yourself real hours, especially if you're working full-time or part-time outside of art. You have to make time to make art or it's never going to happen. And you can't wait for inspiration. Like, if you're waiting for inspiration, everything is going to be so slow. You just have to like sit down, even if you set yourself a little like task, little like practice sessions, it is better than not making art. Pricing is tricky. I'm not going to get into it here today because we simply do not have enough time. But I do have a TikTok series on my TikTok, which is just my name, at Keight MacLean, or you can contact me there afterwards. I'm always happy to help people with pricing art because it is just so convoluted and complicated. Other good advice is really try and build a network of other artists, whether it's people you studied with at OCAD, or for me, it's a lot of people I met at art fairs and stuff. Olivia is actually one of them. And it's great to just have people to ask about shows and galleries and like reputation and things. Like, if someone approaches you and you're like, I don't know, does this sound right to you? It's great to have another artist to be like, I don't know, that sounds sketchy, I wouldn't do it. Or like, oh yeah, I heard about this thing, I think it would be like super well suited for you, but not me, you should do this. Last two tips are ones that I've learned through years of doing this, but art buyers are often I like to say overwhelmed. Some people might say dumb, but I'm going to say overwhelmed. And you have to make everything so obvious. Your prices got to be so obvious, so easy to find. When I'm doing fairs, I'll have like prices literally right there next to them, and then whole like price sheets and price books just so like you can't possibly miss it. And same with what I was talking about with websites earlier. You got to make your art easy to buy if you want to sell it, because any barrier to buying will be someone's excuse to not buy. So that's all I had prepared to talk about. And I guess I will pass it back over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Keight. So, as a reminder, we're going to do the Q&A portion after Olivia's presentation. So if you have any questions for Keight, please put them in the Q&A box and take a moment to maybe stretch, and we will get Olivia's presentation queued up.
Amazing. Can everybody hear me? Sweet. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. My name is Olivia Mae Sinclair. My contact information is on that slide there, my website and my Instagram. And I also just wanted to say that my work talks about sexual violence. I don't go into detail, but if you feel that you need to step away from this or the recording, please feel free to do so. So I did my undergraduate degree at Sheridan College studying textiles, and I did my MFA at OCAD University in the Interdisciplinary Art, Media, and Design program. I am a Harborfront Center Artist in Resident alumna, and I'm a current sessional instructor at Sheridan College, OCAD University, and I'm also a current member at Center 3 in Hamilton. So I just wanted to show you what my life looks like and what being an artist looks like to me. It is so busy and chaotic all the time. So working with galleries through solo shows and group shows, collaborations, basically like working in the studio to foster sales. So marketing, commissions, working through making sales through my website and Instagram, teaching, as I mentioned, and then probably like the biggest portion of being an artist for me is admin work. This should probably be the center of the bubble, but it's endless emails and applying to different opportunities and grants. And then small off to the side is staying inspired. So my talk is focused in like showing you my work and sort of showing you through the journey of my practice as an artist. So I also didn't mention at the beginning that I'm a textile book artist. That's like my medium, that's what I do. And this was the very first textile book that I made at Sheridan College in my undergrad in third year. So this was the first time I had made a piece of art in that program that really felt like it mattered and that I really connected with it. And I didn't like compare myself to the people around me. This just really felt like it clicked for me. And I knew that I wanted to continue making these fabric books. Also in my undergrad, I learned to screen print, and I'm not somebody that I would say is good at drawing or illustrating. So I use photo techniques to screen print onto the fabric. So showing archive images, handwriting, mark making, those are all ways in which I express myself onto the fabric. And I taught myself how to screen print the photos. That wasn't something that I was taught at Sheridan. So I was really, really interested in screen printing and moving forward with that. In my final year at Sheridan, I was creating a thesis collection of these fabric books. And I felt really confident and like I knew what I wanted to do and like show in the final gallery situation. And I was working with the screen printing and mark making, and then I started working with fabric manipulation techniques. So ripping, fraying, cutting, slashing. And the idea here was that the books are mirroring me and my mental status. So on the outside, I might look like I have it all together, but on the inside, maybe not all the time, like these books. So like I said, I was really confident and I knew what I wanted to do, but I was asked a question that changed the course of literally my entire life. I was speaking with one of my instructors, Thea Haynes, and she said, "Wow, Olivia, these books are really cool. So for the thesis exhibition in the gallery, how will people know to touch them and should they be touched?" And I hadn't considered this up to this point, and yeah, it just really shook me. And I wanted to try something that was like I wanted to like research and really figure out how can I ask people to break the rules in the gallery. So my question became, how do I encourage the public to touch the work or the books in a gallery setting? So I'm asking you to break the rules. I'm asking you to interact with something in this like pristine space. And so out of a place of apathy and frustration and just like all this time and energy spent into trying to figure out how to get people to touch them, I decided to title the books, Please Just Fucking Touch Me. And this was displayed at the Textiles Museum of Canada in 2019. So this was like finishing my undergrad, and I also decided to showcase these on a shelf because I thought it would be more approachable for people to go up and touch them. I think putting them on a plinth is literally putting them on a pedestal. So I was playing around with like how to display things in a gallery. So my shift from my undergrad to my MFA became, how do I force the public to touch my books in a gallery setting? So changing the word encourage to force was a way to mirror some of the experiences I've had in my life. And I also really wanted to maybe make people uncomfortable and break some rules. So this was one of the first pieces that I made in my grad studies at OCAD. If you're familiar with the grad gallery, there's a little hallway that moves in there. So for the final critique for this assignment, my classmates had to walk over this textile piece that I had made. So this piece is made out of both old and new textile works that I had made, and it was a way for me to physically like get over the experiences that I had been through, but also to make people uncomfortable with how they interacted with my work. And I got a lot of feedback that people were really uncomfortable by it, and I loved it, and it made me want to continue thinking about that and researching how I can do that. So this like really skips over my whole MFA, but this is my final solo exhibition at Remote Gallery, and it was playing with agency, consent, power play, like gender dynamics. There was a lot that I was working with, and I'm really glossing over this exhibition because I want to talk about building business and obtaining opportunities after graduating. So from 2021 to 2025, I was a artist in residence at Harbourfront Center. I did my application and my interview like 2 weeks after I graduated from OCAD. So it was like a very quick turnaround time for me. And this time was incredible. I can't recommend Harbourfront Center enough. It gave me the dedicated time to grow my business, to make new work, to create community, foster collaborations, run workshops, so getting teaching experience, having exhibitions, making lifelong friends. I already said this, but I can't recommend Harbourfront Center enough. And also like doing either long-term or short-term residencies to really focus on your practice. Part of my intention at Harbourfront was to start creating work that could be production work or make like multiple pieces at the same time, and hopefully lower the price point of some of my pieces so they would become more accessible. So this piece titled IUD, or In Your Dreams, was an example of me sort of switching my practice to something that can be more replicatable. Through Harbourfront Center, I was offered my first ever in-person, public, and paid solo exhibitions. So I was paid Carfax fees for this exhibition. I'm so thankful for it. I had this idea long before the opportunity came up, but I wanted to screen print images of the inside of my body because I had done images of the outside of my body many times. So I called all kinds of clinics that I had, CT scans and x-rays. And so these are actual images of the inside of my body. This was a huge opportunity for me, and I also wanted to think about how I can continue to sell my work alongside these original pieces. So this was a companion piece that I made alongside the exhibition for people to take home with them. And this was my inspiration, was like, how can I be the AGO gift shop? Like, what can I do to replicate that? So this is how I did it. Doing markets is a really big part of my practice and how I'm able to sustain my practice and make income. So the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair is one of my favorite shows. I've done it every year except for 2024. It was actually my first ever art fair. Start big, I guess. In 2019, I got the honorable mention for Best Student Award, and so that just like propelled me to keep going with it. This image here is the first year that I ever did it. My booth looks so different now. This was just this past summer at Nathan Phillips Square. I can't recommend this event enough to, everybody, both collectors, lovers of arts, and like artists that want to see maybe how other artists do it. It being how to curate a booth for an art fair or how to generate sales. It's a really great event every year. In 2022, I applied for Artist Project kind of on a whim. A friend of mine had done it in the past and had a lot of success at it. So I applied for the Untapped section, which is a section that's free to exhibit in for emerging artists. And this was a big switch for me because I had been making these very sculptural pieces for so long. And this is like a more commercial event. So putting my work in frames was sort of how I worked through that. It was scary to do, but it worked out really good. I won the People's Choice Award in 2022, so I was invited to come back the following year. And I've done an artist project every year since. Keight also mentioned that it's a great event. But each year I've like done a bigger booth and more every time. So in 2024, I upgraded my booth size, which was a huge financial risk. It ended up working out really great. I love meeting with the community and meeting with people and talking about my work. And then part of 2024, I also did an installation project. So if you see, there's me here with my installation, and then my booth was in the back here. So it's free to exhibit as an installation artist. Again, another like huge recommendation would be applying for that if you are interested in it. Something about doing like markets and shows and all that kind of stuff is not to just like count up your money at the end of the weekend and decide whether or not it was successful. The opportunities that come from doing markets are like the more impactful part, I find. So on the left-hand side, there's a little picture of me and this curator. His name is Vu. We connected, we had great conversations, and you know, we've worked together many times after, and it all just like started from a single conversation at the Artist Project. He offered me a solo exhibition in 2023, so there's some images from that. And then on the right-hand side, I had met a curator from the Cambridge Ideas and Exchange Gallery, and they encouraged me to apply with the installation piece that I made for Artist Project to the show. And they ended up acquiring this piece. So this was my first institutional purchase just this past year. Very exciting. So this wouldn't have come if I hadn't have just applied a few years ago to Artist Project on a whim. Sort of on that same vein, I had done some smaller zine shows in like 2019, 2020, and I had a lot of success there because people knew like to touch books and to interact with books because there were other book objects there. So I decided to apply to the Toronto Comic Arts Festival in 2021, and that was a huge success. I love this event. I've done it many, many times. The people that come out to it are so lovely and so great. Yeah, love Toronto Comic Arts Festival. From that experience of like applying to something kind of on a whim, I decided to apply to Comic-Con, which is like kind of outside of anything that I know about. I'm not like an anime fan, or like I don't know what goes on at Comic-Con, but I decided to take a calculated risk and apply, and it was so successful. So I would say like a piece of advice here is like try things maybe a little bit outside of what you think the norm is and see how it goes if you can, you know, justify the risk. I have done the Design TO Festival many, many times, and it's such a great event. I can't recommend it enough. And I just wanted to showcase two projects that I had done through them. So on the right-hand side was a piece that I had displayed at the Combine at John and Wellington downtown. And then on the left-hand side, I'm very proud of this piece, so I wanted to show it to you all. This is a billboard that I have in Roncy. It's actually still up. It's almost been standing for a year now. This is a great event. I encourage you to check it out. Finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit about an OAC grant that I received last year. Last year, my goal was to travel outside of Ontario for a zine or book show, and I had applied to the Vancouver Art Book Festival and gotten accepted, but traveling and staying in Vancouver is very expensive, so I applied for this grant, and I was awarded said grant. So this was a huge opportunity and milestone in my career, and I learned a lot about my practice and myself, which is like kind of funny and unexpected, but the people in Vancouver thought my work was funny, like haha funny. And the people in Toronto see it and they really resonate with it. So this was just interesting. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. My contact information is there. If you have any questions, please let me know in the Q&A.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Olivia. Okay, two really fulsome presentations from the both of you. And so what I'll do is I'll hand it over now to JJ to get the Q&A period started for us and continue the discussion.
I just want to say, wow, you two are incredibly impressive. And in general, I am really impressed with OCAD U graduates. I'm always really blown away at your self-sufficiency, your initiative, your ability to run a studio by yourself. And I think that's hopefully your education has given you the confidence to be able to do so. But I did want to ask, because this is the teacher in me and this is the chair in me, what would what advice would you give to a first-year student coming in who, first of all, is terrified about pursuing a life in art and may not even know what they want to do? And second of all, a graduating student, say a thesis, who is equally terrified and not sure where to go. Let's start with Keight.
Sure. I mentioned it in my talk, but I have some chronic health issues and a learning disability. So I would really encourage everyone to actually look at their education and realize that it's not one size fits all and that you
Mhm.
have options and you can tailor it to yourself. I worked very closely with for a few years with the Center for Students with Disabilities at OCAD, which was life-changing for me. I was on OSAP my whole time through OCAD, and they have grants for students with disabilities and also let you take a part-time course load and it count as a full-time course load if you need to do that. So
Mhm.
you still get full-time funding while taking less courses. And that made all of the difference. I think, my first 2 years at OCAD on a full course load and had a really bad time.
Yeah.
And the second I dropped down my course load, it was like night and day. And I found that I was learning, which is why I was at OCAD. I wasn't just like, getting deadlines done and then not thinking
Yeah.
about it again. I was actually taking time to like take in what I was learning and, apply it to my life and my work and like actually internalize things instead of just like regurgitating things for exams and stuff.
Fantastic.
Um, so that's my big one for first year students. Olivia, do you want to do first year and then I'll come back and do graduating?
Okay, thanks, Kate. That's a really solid answer. That was really good. That's great advice. My
Thank you.
advice, you're welcome. My advice would be to really like connect with people. I don't like the word networking because I think it's like a gross institutional word that like trips people up. I think that networking is about connecting with people and making friends. And like the people that you connect with and become friends with are the people that you can call on in the future. I will say, like, speaking from just a personal experience, I had a friend that I had met at the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair. We were like booth neighbors in 2021, and we just like chatted. And then later on, she was working at a gallery in Ottawa just as like an admin person, and then worked there for a few years and like kept climbing the ladder, and then eventually reached out to me when she was a curator and said, "Do you want to be represented by this gallery?" You never know where other people are going to end up and what opportunities come up. The other half of that is like if you have an opportunity for somebody else and it isn't a good fit for you, to pass it up. Like you have, it goes both ways basically.
That's great.
Thanks.
Yeah, majorly agree on that because there's so much that comes across my dashboard that I'm like, that sounds so cool, but like I couldn't do that with my art. But I've met, especially at art fairs, I meet so many people. Art fairs are grueling and you become very close with your booth neighbors every year. And every year that I do these fairs, you just like gain new best friends essentially, who are also artists who make art different than yours. And it just like strengthens that community. So for my advice for graduating students,
Mhm.
I will say
Terrified.
practice, but that's just I'll say that to everyone at every opportunity. Same with first years, like you should be practicing too. But
Yeah.
I feel like a big takeaway from like especially for me, I was at OCAD for 6 years doing summer school every year too. So like I was in school for quite a while. I had to relearn how to make art for myself without an assignment. So I
Mhm.
would say really in your like final year start thinking about making art for you. Because if you're not making art for you, suddenly you're just going to be like dropped out the end of OCAD and you're like, ugh, I know so many people who graduate and like don't make art for a while. Don't do that. Like start making art for yourself now. Start like brainstorming, even if it's just like you know, I did this assignment in fourth year that I really liked. I think I might want to try and reproduce that. Or like I did a piece a couple months or like a few years ago that I like the concept of, but I'm a lot better now, so I want to reproduce that. Setting yourself tasks like that can be a great way to just start making art for yourself again, because once you graduate, no one's telling you what to make anymore. So that'd be my advice.
That's great advice. Olivia Mae?
I agree. That's really good advice. It's a practice still though. Like even years outside, you have to just keep making things and be inspired. My advice for a graduating student would be to put together a neat and tidy folder on your desktop of your application materials. So after you've gone through with Keight's advice and you've practiced and you've made so many things for yourself, take really good photographs of them, have your CV and artist bio ready to go on your desktop. And then when you see an opportunity that comes up late at night on Instagram and the call is due tomorrow, you can apply for it really quickly. Your first application for anything is going to be the most difficult, but once you have this nice folder with everything ready to go in it, applying will become easier every time.
That is all really excellent advice. And really, yeah, really wise. I'm going to read some questions from the Q&A to for you. Kieran says, any advice for finding an art community as a recent graduate?
Oh, I've got a great one, and I feel like Olivia will agree with me. Outside of art fairs, which obviously you have to, one, get into, and two, pay money to be a part of, studio collectives are incredible. I've made some of my best friends through studio collectives. For my first several years as a working artist, I was working in shared studios, and even now I'm in like a private studio in a shared building that has 30 other artists in it. And when they're there and you're making art together, there's so much of like, does this look right to you? And it's just a great way to build that community. And so many times, like with my studio mates, you know, not everyone, but a couple of you will get together and be like, we could pitch a show together. Like our art is similar enough, or like we have similar themes. We could get together and make things happen, which as a solo artist, you can't always do for yourself. So I'd say that's a great place to find community if you can.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. For me, I was really lucky because I went to Harborfront for my residency like right after graduating. So that community was like already built in for me. I would say like similar to finding collectives, if you could do a long-term residency, yeah, go for that. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Thank you. There's another question for Olivia from Jane. Do you get pushback from gallery management when you ask people to touch your work? I love the idea, but galleries often have their own rules. Speaking as someone who worked in galleries and a museum.
Thank you so much for your question, Jane. I haven't had much pushback. It's a lot of like logistics planning. I have had instances in galleries where theft has occurred, which my policy for theft right now is if you need it so desperately and so badly that you're going to steal it, you can just have it. The piece that was stolen said, I promise you'll be okay, and even if not, I'll always love you. So I think the person that took it really needed that. But it's a lot of just like discussion and like policy around, I guess, theft and like figuring out how people are actually going to interact with it. My work, I'm also not terribly concerned about like the archival properties. Obviously, I want it to last for a very long time, but I want there to be wear and tear and for evidence of people touching it. So for an answer, I haven't had too much pushback. A lot of galleries have been really excited about it.
Great. Okay, Keith has asked, what would you do differently for a festival like Toronto Outdoor Art Fair? Perhaps bringing a fan or something for the weather? Any tips for the outside?
Oh yeah. I'm super sensitive to the heat, so Toronto Outdoor Art Fair is always the hottest weekend of the year, somehow every year, and it is
It's true.
kind of a nightmare, but also like millions of people come through it. Like it is always worth it. But I have a portable rechargeable fan. I have a backup manual fan if that dies. I have battery packs to charge the portable fan. I drink a lot of like electrolyte drinks, like Gatorade and like fancy like cyclist electrolyte powder and all of that. I have friends literally just bring me ice and ice packs. Like it is half of the show is like I'm here, all of the setup is done, my work will sell itself. My job is to not die. uh so yeah, absolutely. It's you gotta stay on top of it, but all of those little things that you do for yourself make all of the difference and cannot be neglected at those outdoor fairs during the summer.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. It's grueling every year, but it's so great. I wouldn't trade it for the world. For me, I practice like having timed rituals. So, at 1 p.m., I change my shoes. At 2 p.m., I have a Red Bull. Sometimes I'll even change like my whole outfit so that it's not sweaty and gross anymore. It helps the day kind of go by and it gives me something small to look forward to at like each different hour. And I'll also say too that like preparing emotionally and mentally to deal with the public is like a big part of it, and being able to protect yourself. I mean, my work is incredibly vulnerable. I think artists in general are very vulnerable. It's difficult to talk to so many people. So having like, I don't know, I would say support and like self-care measures in place to be able to separate you and the work. People say like weird side comments all the time, and the more you do it, like the more you do art fairs, the easier it'll be. But yeah, just ahead of time, be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's excellent advice. And it's so hard sometimes for us to separate our work from ourselves. And if there's a negative response or criticism to the artwork, it feels like they're attacking us. So
Yeah.
it's a hard one. Okay, Carrie wants to know, have either of you approached galleries for representation? And if so, how?
Mm. I've been fortunate enough that all of the galleries that have represented my work have approached me. But on the flip side, most of the galleries I'm working with now, I don't have exclusive representation with, so much as like there's a contract and I work exclusively with them or anything. But I work with them, they're larger international galleries, mostly in the States, and I work with them more often. But in order to get into those galleries, you definitely have to approach them. Most galleries, if they are looking for artists, they will say so on their website. They will have a way to get in touch, or they will explicitly say, do not get in touch. But I find the easiest way to go about it is when galleries have open calls for art, is how you like start building a relationship with them. And like I just said, I sent 2 pieces down to San Francisco at Modern Eden Gallery, and that came about. I applied to an open call, and then I got in, I showed at the open call, and then a few months later they messaged me like, hey, we have this group show coming out, I think your work would be a really good fit for it, would you be able to make a piece for this show? So that's generally how that goes.
Do you have anything to add, Olivia?
I really don't. I think you did a great job covering it all, Kate.
Okay, great.
I will just say that I think all of the representation I've got was either people finding me at art fairs or approaching me at art fairs and like finding me afterwards and emailing me then. My longest gallery relationship, unfortunately, it was my favorite gallery and they just closed this past year. They went into retirement.
No.
They were an old gallery and it's fair and I miss them a lot. But I actually showed at like a small art fair in Kingston, which is where I'm from originally, the women's art fair, and someone bought a piece of my work and then years later became a curator at the big gallery downtown and approached me with representation that way. So it's a lot of those things, that just putting yourself out there, and if it happens, it happens.
Fantastic, thanks. Kathy wants to know if you're, Kathy says, I'm curious if you had or perhaps still have a mentor.
I can go
turned off my
first.
camera instead of turning
Sure.
off my phone. I had a brief mentorship program. I can't even remember whether it was through OCAD or through a gallery, but it was a brief one where I partnered with a local Toronto artist and who was essentially where I am now, and taught me a bit about, no two careers are the same. So I pick and chose like things that I took away from it. But one of the big takeaways I did take away was she taught me how to price my art, which was a game changer. So yeah, and I've done mentorships for artists in the past as well through OCAD, and I think they're great. I think that you learn more from other artists than anything else.
What I'm loving about this conversation is, and this is something I try to convey to my students, is that art school, we're teaching you to be creative, individual thinkers that make. And sometimes there's this expectation that we're supposed to teach you how to make money. And oftentimes, like, I'm in the position that you're much better place to talk about that than me. And also, but I wanted to know what do you feel like your undergraduate degree provided you? Like, what kind of tools? I mean, we're not going to say you price your work this way and that way. It's true. Most artists learn about that after they graduate. Even certain techniques they learn about after. We're setting you up. But what would you say you got from your undergraduate degree?
Oh, this is an easy one for me because I had such a mash of an undergrad where I studied illustration, and from
Right.
illustration I got a lot of like deadlines and nose to the grindstone and like business, thinking about business, and we did get a bit more professional practice teachings in illustration, even though none of it was all that relevant to my career. But also you get taught to like, depending on instructors and everything, I was taught super classical painting, which is what I do all the time now. And then obviously my year in Italy was entirely independent practice. And I think OCAD still offers independent practice as its own thing, not in Italy, but like I would encourage, if you're interested, to look into that, because independent practice really taught me how to like be my own artist and like do, schedule my own time and make sure that I'm making art and not just, no deadlines, don't have to do anything. So it was like I learned so many different things in my undergrad that, were all like pieced together into what I do now.
I would say for me in my undergrad, it was a lot of technique because I went to Sheridan. It's a college. The program I graduated from was a BFA, but it was like very in studio based and technique based. But we did have a professional practice class, and I would say in undergrad it was a lot of like figuring out how to do a CV. I would say that was like a big part of the professional practice that we learned. But then in my MFA at OCAD, I would say being able to read critical text and to be able to write and talk about my work was like the biggest takeaway. To do an MFA was to be able to talk and write about what I actually want to do in my work.
It's true.
Yeah.
Lucia, we have just a few minutes left. Should I read the rest of the questions, or?
Yeah, why don't we there's 2 more questions, one from Carrie and one from Robin, and then after those 2, I think we'll wrap it up if we have time.
Okay. Carrie. Okay, for Olivia again. You work in so many formats. Could you speak to your practice in terms of the spatial requirements? And could you speak more in detail to the work you created for Design TO? How did you produce those installations?
Thank you for your question, Carrie. I do work in many formats. I like to push myself creatively. So the pieces I make for Design TO, they're always the biggest. And every year when I'm at like various markets and shows, collectors tell me they want my work bigger. And I like working big. So at Harborfront, we had a print table that was 54 inches wide and I believe like 12 feet long. I don't have access to that space anymore. I'm done there. The new studio I'm at is much smaller and I have like I don't know measurements, but like two regular work tables pushed together. But doing everything in sort of small increments and like building it up into bigger pieces through sewing is like how I achieve that. And then I think you might also be asking about the billboard piece. That was the first time I'd ever displayed something that I actually had made start to finish. So I designed the billboard and I sent the printing off to a company. And so they printed it onto vinyl. I had considered doing it myself, but the billboard itself was, God, 8 feet by 16 feet, and I just don't have that kind of space. So yes, I sent it off.
That's great. Okay, and the last one is from Robin, who has some good advice about outdoor advice to prepare for wind, ropes, weights, prepare for rain, with plastic covers, extra socks and shoes. But Robin also asked about disabilities and how it best to ask for accommodation. My work is physical performance, and if I mention disability, I don't get hired. Any feedback?
My work is not physical, so I don't know what accommodations there are to ask for that. For my disability and my work, especially for things like Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, where it is very physically demanding, I've mostly just built like a social network of people who can support me physically when I need it. So I don't really have good advice for accommodations for professional stuff.
I do know that there are granting agencies that are trying to reach out much more for disabled artists, or and there's also communities that exhibit and reach out to artists with different abilities. And I think it's like connections is always good.
Yeah, Tangled at 401 Richmond is a really great resource for disabled artists. And
yeah, and there you will find community, and I think that's the underlying message both of you had is meet, connect, and as an artist, that's what you do. You connect with people.
Yeah, and as a disabled artist resource, they would probably also have the resources or like have a better answer to your question than I do.
Okay, so time's up. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So we've come to the end of the webinar. Thank you, Keight, Olivia, and JJ for your time today and sharing your practices with us and just this wonderful conversation. If all goes well, this recording will be available after the fact. You'll receive it to the email that you registered for the webinar with, and that's it. Thank you so much for your time and attention today, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Everyone, thanks for
Thank
coming.
you. Stay sloppy.
Bye.